button. Okay, so I believe that we are now live. Let's give it a moment or two to finish up. Okay, so hello. Welcome to the Escondido Public Library's virtual author chat series. This series is in partnership with the Mysterious Galaxy bookstore, where you can purchase copies of Empire Builder by Dr. Sandra Bonura, who is here with me today. I'm Jessica Buck, your host, and I'm joined by author and historian Dr. Sandra Bonura. Thank you so much for being here today with us. I'm really excited to hear all about your book. And I love your backdrop, by the way.
Oh, thank you very much.
Much
It's
more
vintage
impressive.
San Diego. Sorry?
It's much more impressive than mine.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, you know. And I want all those watching to know that if you have any questions during the presentation or any questions for the author, just plop those into the comments and I will ask those as they come up. And before we get to all of that, Dr. Bonura will be giving us a wonderful presentation on her book and some of San Diego's history. So I'm going to go to this and allow you to share your screen.
Okay, let's go. Yes, my backdrop is vintage San Diego, just like me. I'm vintage Sandy, born in San Diego. And this is the John D. Spreckels building, which is why I chose this old photo. So yes, I'm looking forward to anybody leaving any comments in the chat. Love to chat. All right, let's share screen. Thanks for your patience. Here we go. Share, share, share. It's not sharing. ¿Qué pasó? Up it goes. Presentation. Can everybody see that? Can we see it, Jessica? Cool. All right, here's my book. I'm going to hold it up. If you see me as a little postage stamp, you're going to see how thick it is. So you're seeing flat on the screen, but let's see if I can get it into your, looks like I can't. Anyway, it's a fat book, 440 pages, just released November 1. So it's really a recent book and it's like selling like gangbusters and nobody can figure out why, but I'm thrilled to death. Let's go. The name John D. Spreckels, because of the fact native and I grew up here, I knew the name, but look at here, Coronado. People who live in Coronado have no trouble thinking, hey, I've heard that name before. We have Spreckels Park, where those awesome concerts are in the summer times. And in the Spreckels right across from the library, we have the Glorietta Bay Inn in Coronado. This is, by the way, John D. Spreckels' former home. We have that mansion on Ocean Boulevard. This is where the infamous hanging was with Rebecca Zahow, and there's lots of little movies on television. Unfortunately, they keep referring to the Spreckels Mansion, but we won't talk about that, but that's that. And we have the Lamps Players Theater in the Spreckels building. And the brand new, I want to say brand new, it's a few years old, but it's the John D. Spreckels Center in Coronado. So if you live in Coronado, you're at least aware of the name and you may not know the man behind the name. Over this side of the bridge where I live, and probably you, is the Spreckels Theater and the Organ Pavilion. Basically, that's all today we relate to. There's this one and only bust, and this bust is literally in the bushes to the left of the Organ Pavilion in the park. I literally jumped over bushes and a beehive to get this picture. The sad thing is, if you're walking by, you wouldn't know who this guy was because his name placard's way, way, way at the bottom. Not visible to the human eye. Now I'm going to age myself right now because this is my San Diego. This is what it looked like when I grew up. There's Interstate 5. Don't you wish it looked like that today with no cars on it? There's the Spreckels building down there where on Broadway were all the little buildings that I remember named after him. Now, this John D. Spreckels building was the first San Diego's first skyscraper, if you will. Wasn't until 2 years later that the El Cortez was built. People say to me, Sandy, how in the world did Spreckles get all those millions of dollars? Short story, he was a sugar refiner because he was raised in a family of four brothers, one daughter, raised by a German immigrant. And they were sugar refiners after a series of twists and turns that I went to. They learned of the Reciprocity Treaty of 1875, where the U.S. granted duty-free entry of all Hawaiian sugarcane because we had our eyes on Pearl Harbor. And this is a way for our country in 1875 to sort of say, hey, you rub my back, I'll rub your back, sort of thing. Well, sugar refiners are like going, huh, what, we don't own the sugar we're refining. Why don't we hop on over there, buy as much sugar cane as we can, and we will be bazillionaires, which is ultimately what happened. This is the new bride Lillian John grabbed up, the lovely Lillian Spreckles. She was 23 when they got married. They met in New Jersey, hopped on a ship, and that's where they spent their honeymoon in Hawaii. And boy, when John D. Spreckles and his father, Klaus Spreckles, the how do you explain him? I don't know. Let's let some of the adjectives of the day do it because they describe both men. Remember, John was the firstborn son of this man, charming, decisive, efficient, pleasant, arrogant, impatient, implacable, ruthless. So it was in bag, as we all are. They went over there with pockets full of cash and began to buy up as much sugar cane as they could before the islanders knew that the reciprocity treaty could have made them rich. And again, I'm not going to give you a history lesson. My area, my background of research is Hawaiian history in the days of the monarchy. I have four published um, primary books on the Hawaiian monarchy. It's a real interest of mine, but let's just go do some bullets here, give you a sense. 1878, remember they arrived in 1877. They bought most of the sugar cane on all the islands and 40,000 acres of crown lands, which is incredible because Hawaii during these days was a monarchy, a king, a queen, ladies in waiting. It mimicked the London royal court, and it was recognized as a monarchy as such. So how Spreckles family were able to buy 40,000 acres of crown lands was a back deal, and there's a lot of historians that have written about that little incident. 1883, all the crops were being sent and they were refining and making money. 1884, sugar empire. So the Spreckles became a household name in sugar in the Pacific. 1885, King Kalakaua, this is him. This is Hawaii's last king. He literally just left San Diego. Oh, I'll say more about that later. Anyways, the king in the kingdom was in debt to the Spreckles family because this Iolani Palace in Honolulu was very expensive. He was a known party boy, so he spent lots of money and he needed some money during this critical political time he found himself into. Spreckles family was only too happy to lend the king of Hawaii as much money as he needed to curry favors for their sugar industries. Now, John D. Spreckles, our San Diego Spreckles, he did not pick sugar as a business. It was a family business. His father picked it for him. He didn't like it. He liked shipping. He said to his father, okay, Dad, we're refining sugar in Hawaii. We're growing it and sending it by ship from Hawaii to San Francisco. Why don't we start a shipping company? We'll ship our own sugar. We will thereby have a monopoly. At 26 years old, this kid, our John D, he had 7 steamships. This is amazing. And they became luxurious. Not only were they shipping sugar in the hold of these ships, they were taking passengers in style. So all of a sudden, people in United States were able to go see all these exotic places that you see here. And because John D was an amazing mariner and like a good German on time, he got the U.S. contract to deliver mail to Hawaii, Tahiti, New Zealand, and Australia. Pretty impressive at the age of 26. Again, no time for a history lesson, except for King Kalakaua left San Diego in 1890, November to be exact, the Hotel Del to be exact. He died on his way home. So he was transported from San Francisco after he left San Diego um, very sick. His sister, Queen Liliuokalani, ascended to the throne. And sadly, the United States overthrew Her Majesty, actually locked her up in her own castle, her palace for 11 months. So the coup d'etat happened. But when she was kicked out and there was a provisional government of Americans taking it over, they had the Spreckels family to contend with. And the Spreckels family were royalists, which means they were loyal to the queen. They were loyal to the monarchy, and they funded her heavily. Arms, transportation, money. That's a little known thing, but they were very loyal. So when the queen was kicked out, so were the Spreckels family. So back to San Francisco they went. They kept their holdings in Hawaii under the direction of others. And John D. Spreckels began to make his mark in San Francisco. He bought the newspaper, the San Francisco Call. Now, I want you to look at this building he built for it. See this call in its context? Here it is pulled out. This is a beautiful building. Now, it was iconic from the moment it was built. It had like the first restaurant known to have a restaurant on the top of this building that did, San Franciscans can climb up there and watch their city grow and have beautiful dinner. Here's a fun fact. Think about the Hotel del Coronado. You can even look at my book cover up here. It's wooden, it's white, red roofed, charming, feminine looking, Queen Anne, built by the Reed brothers. The Reed brothers also built this building, so they really were amazing architects. So next time you look at the Hotel Del, think about how he built this incredible, iconic, beautiful tower. John lived in Pacific Heights, which was a ritzy neighborhood once people could ascend up there. And you will see here his children. Have a look at his beautiful children. He had four, he had mansions, he was wealthy. You can see this is actually the interior of his home in San Francisco. So you're looking at a man who lived opulent. Now, John D, remember he loved ships, he loved boats, yachts, actually anything with a machine. But what he loved most was going out on his personal yacht. At this time, it was called the Lurleen. These are his daughters. This is his eldest, Grace. This is his youngest, Lily, named after Mama. And they could have gone to Hawaii for on a luxury steamship and eaten lobster and caviar, but this is where he came alive. This is what the children remembered and wrote about. John D. Spreckels loved to be on the water. And this took 2 weeks. There's a story in my book. I was actually able to, if you go back up here, you'll see these children. To write my book, I was able to get in touch with descendants of these four children during my research, which my book pretty rich. The fact that I was able to find all those descendants. Back to here, Lillian remembers a story where dad brought a milk cow on board for one of those Hawaiian voyages so the kids can have fresh milk. Good idea, right? Well, Lillian remembers that the yacht went up over this wave. It went up, the cow went over, the sharks moved in for the kill on that poor cow, much to the horror of the kids. That wasn't their favorite trip. Now, I'd like you to read here what John D says about the fact he discovered San Diego. Would you please have a look at that? So it was in 1887. San Diego was in the middle of a financial boom. Everybody was moving here. They wanted a piece of the action from Los Angeles, Riverside, Orange County, San Diego. The railroad had moved in, created this amazing boom, and San Diego was just starting to get built up. He he rolls into town, if you call him rolling on waves, perhaps on his yacht. He was now 34. This is a picture of him, what he would have looked like, and he discovered it was an accident. And when he was here, I mean, by now the Spreckels family's famous. All the leaders of San Diego said, "Oh, the Sugar Prince is here." It's actually a headline in a newspaper of the day. And John D remembers that they begged him. They met him at the dock saying, "Oh, okay, you're going to give me special favors. You just want me to invest here." Well, he looked around and said, "Looks like a pretty good idea to me." And this is his first investment in San Diego in the middle of this financial boom. The train, San Diego's only way out for people, was getting out of here. We're like, they said, we are not staying in San Diego because we can't get coal. There was no deep water wharf in which ships to bring coal. So he convinced the train people to stay put in San Diego. Please continue. I'll build a wharf. We'll bring coal. As a matter of fact, now we could bring in building supplies to build up San Diego. And look how many people were employed. Pretty impressive. There, you can see this is at the foot, by the way, of Market Street. And this is where I used to be able to go take the ferry to Coronado. Anyways, let me just give you a quick little anecdote how Spreckels is. This is really the waterfront of San Diego back in the day. Look at these little skinny wharfs where my mouse is going over. You see that? These skinny ones. People lived here and those were their wharfs and they were making a living here. Well, they were pretty ticked off when this upstart multimillionaire from San Francisco started building that fancy wharf. They were like, "Oh, I don't think so." They got a legal injunction to stop building. But nobody said, you don't say no to Mr. Spreckels. He hired 2 full crews to work on his pier. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Excuse me, that's the first time. As soon as the first crew was hauled off to jail, the second crew picked up where the first one left off. When the second crew was jailed, the first crew was bailed out with second with Spreckels' money. They returned to the job until the opposition was worn out. This man was, he was unstoppable. During that boom in San Diego, he had already known Elisha Babcock. There he is in the front. And this here is Mr. Story. They said, "Come on, see Coronado. I'd like to show you what we're up to. We're building a hotel. We're going to get money and we're going to start building the community and the hotel." And some of you here will recognize this white beard as, let me give you a minute to think who that is. Father Horton. So this is Coronado Beach back in the day. And Spreckels was probably impressed. If I'm pretty sure he was. This is an actual authentic map of how Babcock and Story had plotted out Coronado because they needed to sell lots, these parcels for people, so they could then get the money to build. Here's the hotel. This is a prospectus. This is the Glorieta Bay Inn. This is San Diego Waterfront. An auction happened. Oh dear me, that went well. So Levi Chase, who was one of our lawyers in San Diego, he bought the first lot for breakfast at $1,600. By lunch, he was offered $3,500 for the very same lot. So we see people were like super excited to live in Coronado at that time and to get in while they could. And I think it's pretty remarkable that 350 lots sold that first day for $110,000. Coincidentally, the purchase price of the entire peninsula. Wow. That seemed very providential at the time. So here they were able to begin building our beautiful Hotel Del. So on February 14th, 1888, she opened up. Dignitaries across the country came, but it was a soft opening because behind the scenes, trouble was brewing in San Diego. The boom was busting. Workers were like, uh-oh, let's get out of here. We're losing money. Nobody could finish it. And then all the investors of the Hotel Del, they started dropping out. So this hotel, which by the way took only 11 months to build, which I think is remarkable, um, opened up and it was beautiful, but it was in trouble because what goes up must come down. And in the early months of 1888, remember the Hotel Del opened up in February of 1888, right on time for the boom to burst and everyone to leave. This is actually a photograph of San Diego. Actually, people, please buy my land. I need to go home. We had 50,000 people at that time. In short record time, population of San Diego dropped to 8,000 people. Look what JD said about that time. They were rats. They jumped off like a sinking ship. Go ahead and take a second and read that. So there was nothing but boom, bust, and despair in San Diego. And Babcock would not let his dream die. Please, Mr. Spreckels, could you be so kind as to become my partner? I'm sure things are going to turn around. I need $100,000. And by the way, Hampton Story's jumping ship too. How would you like to buy his share? Well, he said yes, 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 and yes, because again, money was no object to our Mr. Spreckels. He wasn't losing any money. So he bought everybody out he could. And within 5 years, he owned everything that the Coronado Beach Company owned, which was, oh, goodness gracious, electricity, trams, ferries. He bought everything. And poor Mr. Babcock could not return the money that he lent, so he lost his portion too. Now, John D. Spreckels made Mr. Babcock the manager of the Hotel Del, so kind of bought his dream. And he got lots of criticism for it from his family. What in the heck are you doing in San Diego? Podunk town, nothing down there. Son, your business is in Hawaii and San Francisco. Stop building there. Oh, heck no, he said. This is my time. After all, his father had built a town called Spreckels, California. He had also built Spreckelsville in Maui. He said, San Diego's going to be mine. This is going to be mine. And he says, I know it doesn't look good right now, but you know what? I'm not looking to make money right now. I'm looking to get a reward for doing something. So this was his chance to individuate from his father. If when you read the book, you're going to see about all the lawsuits as the sons grew up. They started suing the father. The father started suing the sons and the daughter. The brothers began suing themselves. Oh, dear me. I called that chapter in my book Sugar and Strife. Supreme Court cases were decided, Spreckels versus Spreckels, pretty spicy stuff in the book. So I think when he bought San Diego, it was probably a good distraction too. He said the San Diego bug got me, but I think that it was again a good distraction. Well, he could have got some bugs here though in San Diego. Please find yourself welcome to the Stingery, or downtown San Diego as it was called in those days. This is today's gas lamp district. Downtown evolved outside the law. Shanties, saloons, prostitution, opium dens, and everything that comes with them. Police raids, arson, murder. You'll see here some newspaper articles about the prostitutes being arrested. They'd be back the next day. Those who the moral set in San Diego said, Mr. Spreckels, you're starting to invest. Would you consider um, building some buildings down here? Now, this time, I remember Spreckels is still living in San Francisco. He said, nope, I'm not interested in this clapboard, rat infested Fifth Avenue. He had a vision and it was going to look like this. Not this, this. But before he could create his vision, he had to build an infrastructure. And he said, San Diego would never grow and my dreams would never be anything unless I secured those fundamental necessities, water and transportation. So he says, I set to work. By the way, this is my favorite picture of him. Love it, with his proverbial cigar. Anyway, San Diego. Oh, dearest me, people. We were thirsty. Oh, we were thirsty. We had no water before Mr. Spreckles came. In fact, people drank beer in the morning, gave their kids beer to save water. And you didn't take showers. You didn't take baths on a regular basis. In fact, your neighbors would look at you, your hair looks kind of clean. Are you using too much water? I mean, there was neighbor shaming going on. So we needed water. He had to do it because he said his investments would never grow unless San Diego had water. Look at the three dams. Recognize those names? Otay, Barrett, and Marina. Go Spreckles. Pretty amazing what this man could do. So by 1912, at his cost, his water company was the municipal water company for San Diego. So there was a time when even everything Spreckles was owning, even the water out of our faucet was his. And he said, I set to work to build a street railway system which could reach even to the outlying sections of the city. This little horse right here was probably the happiest person to see Mr. Spreckles. Can you imagine him hauling around a bunch of San Diegans where there was little water to give these horses and the streets were dusty? John D. Spreckles sent them to pasture to eat hay, and he set about to build these streetcars. This, by the way, is America's first pay-as-you-go streetcar. I invite everyone to visit National City, where they have some of these streetcars still at their museum down there. And with the San Diego Electric Railway, John D. Spreckles was able to help people move out of that congested downtown where all the crime was. Now, streetcars were built, they were plotted, suburbs were built. Pretty impressive. He bought the Union because every good developer knows you want to silence the naysayers, buy the paper, and you create the narrative. And when the Union Tribune began to criticize the San Franciscan buying up the whole city and changing it, he saw that problem, shut them up by buying that newspaper. So he bought the Union and he had the Tribune. Today we have the San Diego Union Tribune. By the way, only his competitors were the naysayers. The public was like going, oh my gosh, finally, I can live in this beautiful city because someone like him has given me water to drink, streets to go on. He gave San Diego its first park. This is before Balboa Park was there. This does not do it justice, by the way. This is like amazing park. We won't go into it. Thank you, John D. Spreckles, for Old Town. Because when I was growing up, this was called Ramona's Marriage Place. La Casa Estudio was renamed Ramona's Marriage Place by John D. Spreckles to get more people there. And of course, he had his critics. You'll recognize, Old Towners, that this is the Cosmopolitan Hotel. He hired Hazelwood Waterman, who, it's a pretty progressive thing to do to hire a woman in that day. And she restored it to historical accuracy. I mean, the first American flag in California was raised in this plaza of Old Town, but everything was crumbling and going to waste. So thank you, John D., because when you restored that, and then writers were coming here to visit it, and people at the Pan Am were visiting it, they were like amazed. And today it is the oldest surviving example of Spanish architecture in California. Pretty significant, our Old Town. Now, if you lived in dreary, damp, foggy San Francisco, you'd love to have a hotel to come take your family to at all the holidays, and that's exactly what he did. There's this cute little boy. That's his little Klaus Spreckles. And actually, that's his grandson, if I'm going to be accurate. This is became a family retreat. Coronado became his paradise. Here's his children growing up, and here they are in the courtyard of the Hotel Del. Got lots of cute stories about how he used to torment the workers there in the book. This is his little boy Klaus, the one that lived in the house where the hanging took place. That's the one. That's his oldest daughter, Grace. Then Lily, remember them from the yacht earlier? Now pay attention to this guy. This is John D. Spreckels Jr., the third. He was AKA Jack. He was going to be the one that would ensure his father's legacy would survive. He would be groomed to take over the family businesses the way he had been groomed. He built Tent City in 1900 for the kids. Loved his kids loved it. All kids loved it. Anybody who lived in Escondido loved it because they could get out of the heat with no air conditioning and have a place to come and perhaps meet a spouse, take a date, listen to music, go swimming, or even stay in an affordable place by the sea. Tent City, what a place. Now, in 1906, as he was building up our city big time, he became deathly ill. And I mean deathly ill. He was only 54, had lots of wealth, but not health. He went down to 100 pounds. His daughter was called back from Europe. Come see your dad. He's dying. He was a hotshot Republican. He missed the Republican convention. That made the news. John D. Spreckels was so ill. And then this happened. So the earthquake, remember this building I showed you earlier? That was the Call building built by the Reed brothers who built the Hotel Del. It literally survived the earthquake, but was gutted in the fires that followed. So John D was carried to a ship by family members to get out of San Francisco. He was a lucky one because he owned this. By the way, this is a picture of his father, his brother, sister-in-law. They're all looking at their safes in the middle of the earthquake. And there's the Call building up close. He was carried down to the Hotel Del. So they became literally refugees. Tent City was then opened up to anybody in San Francisco who was a victim of the earthquake. Please come make your home. We know you don't have to pay. We have a place for you. He was deathly ill here, but he got to work because the incredible happened. Nobody knows why. His health started returning almost the moment he returned down here. And people say, was it the climate? Was it just a mission and a purpose? No one knows. But he said, well, we're not even going back to San Francisco ever, not even when they rebuilt the city. So he built his home right here. And it's still standing today as the Glorieta Bay Inn. There's the Hotel Del. And this has became his mansion. And later he would build a solarium on top of this, and this would be built into a music room because he played the organ quite proficiently. There was also a tunnel underneath the Hotel Del all the way here, so he could travel over there, get his hair cut by his barber, see his doctor. He had a lot of business over there, and during Prohibition, that tunnel served a good purpose. He began building up the city that became his home. Donated a library to Coronado. Some of you will recognize Star Circle. This is where the Lambs Players building is. This is the El Cordova Hotel, where this was Babcock's home. He started widening and paving the roads of Coronado. And then when other people came in, was criticizing him from doing too much, he became furious. In my book, you're going to see lots of stories because he was not a man that talked. He didn't talk. He wrote. So he wrote to the people, why are you criticizing me? I've done so much for you. Lots of juicy stories in the book about that. Because after all, Coronado was his home. This is beautiful picture of Mr. Spreckels with his children. Excuse me, grandchildren. Just a few of them. He had 10. And see these chains hanging right here. Still today, if you walk into the lobby of the inn, you'll see the hooks that hold these. Thank you, Gloria de Bay Inn, for keeping those hooks in the ceiling. Same time he was, building Coronado up, he was also building up San Diego downtown. Infrastructure, check. Let's go superstructure. This is D Street. He renamed it Broadway. So he owned all of North Island and Coronado and the ferry system. He would come here to work every morning. He owned every single lot on the south side of Broadway. And there's his streetcars he owns, Spreckels Theater, Union Building. He owned them all. I mean, this man is like, he just was Mr. San Diego. Let's look at some of those buildings up close. Spreckels Theater still standing today. Shame on you if you haven't gone there. Oh, dear me, is it beautiful. Just opulent. I was really disheartened when Jacqueline Littlefield died at 96. She's been the owner for decades of the Spreckels Theater. She kept it as it was. Now it's for sale. So prayers upward, fingers crossed, the right person buys that. He built this beautiful Union building. As you see by the wrecking ball, bye-bye. Even though Soho tried its best, we don't seem to care much for our historical buildings the way we should. This was San Diego's first classism and concrete building because John D. built all his buildings using Harrison Albright as the architect, and they were all steel encases in concrete. They were built to withstand anything. And anyways, 1974, level down. His beautiful hotel, boom, 2006. We demolished that too. Now, those of you San Diegans, I bet you recognize this hotel because it looks like another one still standing today on Broadway. Think of the fancy old hotel there. Just give yourself a minute. Yep, U.S. Grant Hotel. Looks like this, doesn't it? You know why? Built by the same architect. And so this one demolished. This one, however, still standing. It's just off Broadway. So many workers were coming into San Diego to build up our city, build the train, get ready for the Pan Am. They had no place to stay for reasonable. So John D. built the Working Man's Hotel, or the Golden West Hotel. Here's me showing you it's still there. Except for if you look, it's really down and out today. Now, it's amazing. He wasn't a philanthropist. He hated that term. He didn't want people to come always holding their hands out looking for something. He said, I'm not a Santa Claus nor a fool. The best charity you can give a man is work, which is amazing because you think about it, 1 in 15 San Diegans work for a Spreckels owned company in his era. That means if you're and just imagine yourself at a party. Hey, what do you do for a living? You're going to, 1 in 15 are going to work. Oh, I work for the railway. I work for the railroad. I work for the Hotel Del. I work for the beach company. I work for the Union Tribune. I work for the water company. I work for the electric company. I work for Savage Tire. This man was boss to thousands and thousands of people. As a matter of fact, he paid 10% of all property taxes in San Diego. Have a look at this slide, if you would. Well, to say, he didn't like to be called a philanthropist, but those of you who are sports fanatics will know the name Ted Williams, MVP, 6 batting titles, gamer. His mother was a Salvation Army worker. Just in this decade, I read his biography. And do you know he credits Mr. Spreckels for the fact that he's an MVP player in our generation. You know why? His mother was a Salvation Army worker, beat the drums all the way down Broadway in San Diego, looking for money, embarrassing his two little boys. Ted, one of them, and his brother. They'd hide their head in shame. He remembered. John D. Spreckels probably saw him as they went to work one day, said, "Hey, what's the deal with that lady and those two boys?" When he found out they were destitute, he quietly paid off the mortgage on this house. And by the way, still standing today. So Ted Williams would never have played baseball right here in San Diego. He's responsible for Balboa Park. He doesn't get any credit for this, by the way. $350,000. Now you think about what that translates in today's money, millions and millions and millions of dollars to get this Pan Am exposition ready for 2 years. A lot of stuff in the book, lots of stories about this place. Of course, he gave us the organ pavilion. That goes without saying. This is his personal organ that was at the Glorieta Mansion. But this was a gift to San Diego, and he paid for even the tuner and the civic organist. I remember as a kid being brought here on Sundays at 2 p.m. to hear the concerts with my grandmother, who, by the way, was also a German immigrant, and she was so proud of Mr. Spreckels. Okay, some of you heard the San Diego Zoo was built due to the sorrowful roar of a lion. That's because when the Pan Am Exposition closed, they left behind animals in cages. Tragic, very tragic. Two doctors, Wegeforth brothers, they were hired by the Pan Am Exposition to be on call their times. One of them married John D's daughter. Would be her marriage. Um, they said, you know what, we got to do something like this. We need to form a zoological society and get these animals out of those cages. Spreckels was a big animal lover. As they became fundraising, they began the Zoological Society. Spreckels gets no credit for it, and the zoo was built. And there's a lot of things. There's some fun stories in that. Some of my favorite stories in the whole book surrounding the zoo. Kind of funny. So you can read up here. We exchanged animals with zoos on one of his luxurious steamships. You'll hear the kind of hard stories that happened on there. Anyways, well, moving on. We got the koalas. By the way, America had never seen a koala bear because they were protected in Australia. But thank you, Mr. Spreckels, for bringing us the koalas. So I don't know. Let's see if any of us can remember real quick what our license plate is on our cars. I'll give someone $100 if you right now put in chat what it is. Quick, go. Shame on you. You're like me. I couldn't remember it for $100 or $500. Mr. Spreckels could remember his license plate. It's number 1. He's number 1 in California, and his two sons and daughters are 2, 3, and 4, because he's very instrumental in building up our roads. There's a picture of him. There's another picture of him. Now, do you remember I told you to pay attention to his oldest son, Jack, who was to be the legacy, who was to ensure that no one would ever forget his name and take over his business? Here he is, this handsome guy. He was in a horrible automobile accident in 1921 and was killed. And he left 4 children. Then right after he died, Lillian died, leaving this guy alone. Good thing he had his yacht, now the Venetia, to provide solace, because everyone who knew him knew the sea brought Captain Spreckels solace. But when we went to war in 1917, the United States president said, we'll be taking this ship. We're taking it. We're conscripting it. It's going to war. And here's his yacht with torpedoes and machine guns on it, just when he needed his ship the most. Lots of juicy stuff about this because big lawsuits against the government. And if that weren't enough, he also owned North Island. The military had been, the army to be exact, had been squatting on his land for years while he paid all the property taxes. In 1917, well, we took your ship, now we're taking your island. He's like, you're what? No, you're going to be paying me for this because I was going to develop into luxury. No, we're conscripting it. We'll take it. Another lawsuit. That's real juicy stuff. North Island became property of the United States of America. Oops, excuse me. Here we go. All the time he's doing all that he was doing, he was building the city a railroad because he promised it. Because at that time, the only way we're going to go east to visit any, Auntie Ruth and Uncle John was to go up to Los Angeles and then over to hook up to the Continental Railway. Now he was going to build his own railway. Look at here, leaving San Diego, dipping into Mexico, go out into Arizona. Excuse me, Campo. If anybody here, I'm sure you've been to the Campo train depot. If not, shame on you, go. It's awesome. You'll see the train tracks, etc. This became big time trouble here. 1906 to 1919, never in his wildest dreams did he think it would take 12 years to build a railroad to hook up. As it turned out, getting from Mexico was nothing to all the collapses and all the disasters that happened, and it cost $19 million in his era. That's a big number. But he wouldn't stop. He was undeterred. His family members were going, this is killing you. You need to stop it. I will not. I give Sandy what I promised. And when it was finally finished, look who drove the train into Union Station downtown. Mr. Spreckels. I love that guy. Driving a train, driving battleships. I mean, there's nothing he couldn't drive. And he says, in spite of hell, and it was hell, a direct train from the east slid into our station on December 1st, my birthday, by the way, and San Diego got what I promised. He had enemies galore, but none like the San Diego Sun, who everything Spreckels did, Mr. Scripps, half brother of Ellen Browning Scripps, made sure he gave another viewpoint to it. And he was antagonistic. Oh my gosh. The Union Tribune criticized him. He criticized them. People were weary of it. And even though Scripps detested Spreckels, everything that went up for the public vote went Spreckels' way. People are like, hey, what's he doing bad? Nothing that's hurting us. This is one of his famous quotes. Everybody's saying, oh, it's a one-man town. He says, well, if being a one-man town's bad for the town, take it from me. It's hell for the one man. And he made one and only one public speech ever because he was an introvert on steroids. He could not address the crowd. He was your man's man. You give him a crowd of 3 or 4 buddies with cigars and a beer, and he was jovial. Put him on any stage, he couldn't speak. And there's many incidences where he had to be rescued when he went to address employees. But I think, if I look at the date in 1923, his wife was very ill. So he was probably, encouraged by her, you need to address all your haters now. He invited every one of city leaders to the Hotel del Coronado for dinner where it was rumored he would speak. People had never heard him speak, ever, unless you were his employee. And you'll have to read the book, but he created a 6-page, single-space type speech, and he read it without once looking up from the paper. And they said that the pages were shaking in his hands. And when the speech ended, 6 pages, he looked up and out at the silent assemblage for the first time. Tears filled his eyes, then dropped down his cheek. His voice came unsteadily as he spoke the only words not written in his manuscript. Gentlemen, I love San Diego. That was his answer to why he did everything. He didn't do it. He could have sailed off and bought 500 islands and, hung in a hammock. But he did it because he began to love this city, and that's why he told them. So 1925, it's his very last birthday, last picture of him, birthday cake. You'll recognize what that is. He died June 7th, and he was eulogized as one of America's few great empire builders who invested millions to turn a struggling bankrupt village into the beautiful and cosmopolitan city San Diego is today. See this empire builders, hence the name for my book. Unfinished business was not yet completed. Belmont Park was not yet completed. And I want to thank you so much for your attention. Those of you who love this city as much as myself and Mr. Spreckels, here's me giving him a big smooch because I had a lot of fun writing this book and researching. I'm going to stop sharing screen now.
Make sure I'm unmuted. That was absolutely fascinating. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
I watched a few of the recordings I could find of you talking about your book, and you are just such a fantastic storyteller because there's so much history, but you made it just this story that we could follow. And I was reading the comments of people that were listening, and Kelly and Beverly both were just so excited about your book and just so fascinated by the history. And just, let me just say, Kelly says stories read so well and makes learning our local history very entertaining.
Nice. That makes me feel happy.
And now I feel like I know a lot about John D. Spreckels, more than I did before. But I feel just from the very end when you were talking about how much of like an introvert he was and with his speech and how nervous that he was, it just made me think about in college when I had to take those speech classes and how we were told not to read, like we could have the cards, but we couldn't read it. And I feel like I just would have connected so much.
Yes.
With John D. Spreckels, because I mean, I do talk and I'm on camera, but
well said, girl.
I prefer not to.
Yeah. That was surprising to me that this powerful man couldn't even address his employees at a Christmas party. It's like more human to me. And everything he gave the Oregon Pavilion to San Diego, but he couldn't accept it publicly. He gave the Spreckels Theater, but he couldn't accept it publicly. He never could stand up. It's like he would just die. And this like powerful guy, charismatic, funny, but only in small circles. And I know a lot of people can relate to that.
Oh yeah, it was very endearing. Like it made me just like him even more.
Oh, that's cool. That's awesome.
So I'm just now reading to see if we have any more comments or any questions. So Beverly has a question. She says that you said John B. played the organ. Did he ever play on the outdoor organ at Balboa Park?
Gosh, Beverly, I know who you are. Beverly's also an author writing a story about Ireland immigrants, her family, because I met you in the author's chat room I'm sure that's you, Beverly. Anyways, that's a very good question. I would have to say absolutely he did, because there's lots of stories about his good buddy who was the civic organist. So I think he slid on that seat and played. I know he played a lot with the Spreckels organ at his house. That organist went over there. I will say yes. I have no record of it, but I have no doubt he played.
I'm just trying to imagine him playing, because I wonder if that type of performing is different than speaking. Like if he could do that in front of a lot of people and be fine.
I would think he would only get up on the organ pavilion and played it when nobody was there. Just when the, like practice for the, tuning it up, or his family was there. At the Gloria de Bay Inn, he placed his organ his back to the wall so he could look at his grandchildren. So today you can see where he used to keep the rolls and stuff. So he wanted to engage. That was his love language with his kids. They said they all learned to play with Opa around the organ. It was a very important part of his life. In fact, one of the Spreckels Organ Society just last week said, I never knew he played the organ. What? And this is a society in San Diego that keeps his legacy alive. I love those people. So yes, he was quite accomplished, and I know that's a surprise to people, but he didn't do it publicly.
Somehow it just makes it even better,
I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. I think it's because there's so many cult followings of different industries of John, like the organ, like shipping. This book sold 1,500 copies almost immediately upon release. I think that they were waiting different, and
I am not surprised at all.
Yeah,
As soon as we added it to their catalog, someone checked it out. I couldn't even get my hands on it.
Yeah, it kind of surprised me too, but then I realized so many different industries he was involved in. 2 weeks ago, Der Spiegel in Germany did a 2-page. Now, Der Spiegel is a weekly publication here with a million subscribers, and they're like, wow, John D. Spreckels' new book. They did a 2-page on the Spreckels family. So I think it's just like people have, have been waiting, and I didn't know that. I was like,
No,
I'm
absolutely.
thrilled and grateful, but I just didn't realize how many people would be reading the book, and I'm thrilled to death.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know as someone who's grown up in San Diego that we hear the same history over and over again, but it's so nice with your book and the research that you've done. It's history that we see, but we haven't really been able to learn about how those things came to be. So it's just absolutely fascinating, and I enjoyed listening to you so much and seeing all the photos. And I love that he was driving the train. That just made me.
I know, that guy's so cool. It's like, really? Yeah, there's a lot of stories in the book. I mean, this slideshow was just little points upon his life. There's a lot of stuff. Some of it goes, ooh, I cringe. I went, really? You did that? Okay. I think readers will be surprised at some of the stories that I unearthed. I don't think I'll ever find a character like John D. to research again. I scored.
Yeah, quite a character.
Yes.
And I want the people watching now and the people that are going to watch later to know that you can purchase a copy of Empire Builder, John D. Spreckels and the Making of San Diego from Mysterious Galaxy. And the link to the book is in the description of the video. And I also pasted that into the comments. And you can also check it out from the library. And I also pasted the link to our catalog in the comments as well. So you better be quick, because there's going to be holes on that book, so you might have to wait a bit because it is popular.
Yeah, and I have been to the major bookstores in San Diego just recently, signing all the books, so you can get it signed at Bay Books in Coronado, Warwick's in La Jolla, Barnes and Noble. So they're also there, and I'm happy if you buy a book from Mysterious Gallery to go there and sign them as well at any request. Maybe someday we'll have. I'm happy to do that. And anybody can contact me on my author's website, sandrabonura.com.
Which I also pasted in, so people can just go right to your website.
Let me know, people, when you're reading the book, I have a question. I want to know more, or can you clarify, or I'm here. I want to hear you. I'm happy to zoom in on book clubs. Use me. I'm fine.
I'm so happy to hear that. You're so full of life. I love it.
Oh, thank you. To see me at 9 in the morning when I'm just on my coffee. This is not my best hour, 3, but yeah, I have more energy. God gave me just a little bit more than most people, and I don't know why.
So, Empire Builder just came out, pretty much. Are you working on anything now? Are you going to working on a new book, or are you just enjoying?
Well, every book is my last book, right? This is my last book. So I'll give you the party line. Empire Builder is my last book. I mean, I have to really I have to really feel it. But as much as I love San Diego right now, most of my other books have been Hawaii based, and it's very expensive to keep going back and forth to Hawaii to do research and to present. But I want my next book, if it's going to be another book, it's going to have to be San Diego based, some unknown person. I don't know who that is or what. Um, but meanwhile, like you pointed out, telling stories. I just love to tell stories, so I have to write them and then tell them. So I'm still telling John D. Spreckels' story. I don't know how to tell it more, but I need to expand. So I don't know. I'm just waiting. I'm at an age where, I don't know. I've got grandkids and dogs, and sometimes it's like, man, why I don't want to write another chapter when I could be playing with those sweet little guys.
Oh, yeah. So it's your next last book. That's
Yeah,
that's the next one.
that's right. I'll tell you, it was not easy at first to write this book because he was a man. My other books had been from a woman's perspective. I understood the motion, the actions of a female. I'm like, get that. Oh, absolutely. This businessman, I've been an educator, professor of education in schools, and so active domain. This guy was like, I would, it was hard to get into his head at first. So I had to do a lot of research with German males. I wanted to understand motivation there, businessmen. It took a while. Now I'm like, oh, I get you, John. I got you now. Oh, that's why you did that. He became like a brother, as I was writing this book. It's like, oh, all right. So it was not always so easy to decipher why the man said and did some of the spicy and saucy things he did that you didn't hear about in the slideshow. I was like, wow. You'll see. In politics, we're spicy. People say this last election, you want to cringe. Oh, you'll read about remember, he was a politician too. He was a Republican in his day. And there were some things that happened during those things that people will be, well, that sounds kind of familiar, like real familiar.
Beverly and Kelly are still just excited. Kelly says if you enjoy her speaking, her writing is just the same.
Oh, who's Kelly? Tell Kelly you're my new best friend. I don't know who Kelly is, but I'm very happy that you like my writing. I love to write. I strive to write how I talk. And that's where I failed in some of my other books, to be completely transparent. I was always, told to keep that scholarly voice, that, in your doctoral program, it's beat into you. And I said, you know what? This is my time. Like John D said, it's my time to build San Diego. This was my time to book. And I not going to analyze his moves in this book. This, you, the reader, you make sense of this book with your own context. You do it. I'm not going to do it for you. And that was important for me to let go and let the reader do that. And I like that. And for me to have a cadence that reads how I sound. Now, some of the most favorite comments I have received are from the descendants of John D. I don't sanitize history, so I write what happened, and I'm sorry about that, people. I'm sorry I have to report this, but it is what it is. A lot of them have met me because I've had a couple of Spreckles reunions, and they said, "Gosh, your book sounds like you talk. I could hear you talking." I'm like, "Yes, that's what I wanted. That's like the best praise that you can actually know me by reading this book. Really
Well, is
great.
there an audiobook version? Because,
Yes, there is, which I
and
didn't
are
even
you
know.
reading? Oh,
My
I was
publisher
hoping
told
that
me
you did.
I don't do any of this. Of me reading it? No. No, 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 no. That'd be way too long. But sorry, I don't know if there's an Audible book now, but there's an e-version of this book that's doing pretty well too. I like books. This is what I like to read. Paper, I dog ear them, I write in them, I doodle in them, I destroy every book I read. I don't know what I would do with a an ebook. That would frustrate. I need therapy. I just couldn't use it. So I'm in awe of all you people that have those your little nooks and your little whatevers you have.
Okay, one last Facebook question, and then we're going to close up.
Okie dokie.
So Beverly is asking, are there any surviving family that carry on the Spreckles name?
Oh, Beverly, you'd have to ask such a hard question. Oh, Beverly, Beverly, Beverly. Well, I was just going to say no, because those were big shoes to fill. And when he died, within weeks, his empire began to be dismantled from
Mhm.
hate filled relatives in San Francisco. They hated him, and they began to sell off all his holdings here in our city like immediately. And remember, in those days when he died, women didn't couldn't take anything. His daughters couldn't hold up. His eldest son died. His youngest son was a party boy, a little bit of a philanderer, bless his heart. And he went through the money so quick. The youngest surviving son, he was left with a broken down truck that you'll read about in the book. Um, his grandkids were left huge amounts of money, and they spend it so quick. All his descendants,
Oh.
as is what happened is, his descendants married people and they wanted that money. And today there's a lot of the haves and the have-nots amongst the Spreckle descendants. But one thing I look when I meet them, and I meet many of them, they are so talented, like John D. Spreckles. Many of them have beautiful voices. They sing gorgeous. They're artistic. John D. was an accomplished painter. I see painters and artists amongst them. I see people who've done incredible things, but not on this scale. So, not your obvious, you know, empire builders, but his genes live in a lot of the descendants, and they're really kind, wonderful, productive people, and they're spread all out. And I want to thank you for having me so much. I did this for the Escondido Library because libraries are my favorite place on earth.
Mhm.
I love librarians, archivists, the old catalog cards. I love, love, love libraries. And I thank you, Jessica, because I know, you don't do it for the money either. You do because you love books. and
Yeah.
and you love knowledge, you love teaching and learning, and this is what we do. So I do this to support libraries, and I hope people don't forget them post
Thank you
pandemic. Get
so
back in there,
much.
people.
And I can't
Yes.
wait until we can have people in-person programs again, because it would be so wonderful to have you in
Right.
person, because you would just fill the room. I can tell.
Yeah, I'm like John D. Spreckles. I can be larger than life. Folks like, give her a sedative, calm her down. I do. I love people and I love life, and I love people and I miss people. I miss hugging people. They're like, yeah, Um, so it's gonna happen again. It really will. And I promise you, Jessica, I
Yeah.
won't get in your space and hug you. I have a few boundaries at my age. but it's a lot of fun. God bless. Keep well. Keep reading
Thank
books.
you.
Keep in touch, everyone. Feel free.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Sandy, for being here with us.
Yep.
Thank you to everyone that was watching. If you're interested in more free online programming events like this chat, don't forget to check out our Facebook page and our website to see all the fun and free digital and safe events we have planned. We hope to see you here again Saturday, March 27th at 11 a.m. for a live story time, followed by another author chat at 3 p.m. And if you get a chance, please fill out the short survey that I pasted into the comments. It's only 3 questions. Just let us know if you enjoyed the chat. And thank you, and we'll see you next time.